Big fish only come to you once you make the small ones bleed. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Hope you're doing well and fine on whichever day it is that you're watching this. And yeah, let's dive in. So, in this video, I want to highlight the relevance of being faithful and handling well small things in life first before you're able to get the bigger and better things that we may want, we may desire. So, a lot of us in life, I think, well, yeah, most of us, if not all of us, at different points, desire certain things, grand things, you know, and some of these things can be really, really good for sure, right? But we're not we're not receiving it. We're not able to get it, no matter what we do, no matter what we try, right? But sometimes our perspective and our focus is not lined up properly because we're not focusing on what we already have, being faithful with that, doing the best of what we have, which can encourage us to actually be able to be um, able to receive and handle properly the bigger stuff that we want. So, to zone in on that point, I'll give two verses of reference. Well, technically four, but two verses with, yeah, we'll see it 1 second. So, to highlight this concept that I'm referring to. So, in Matthew 25, verse 21, it says, excuse me, it says, His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. All right. And then I'll carry right into Luke. Luke chapter 16, verses 10 to 12. They read, He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to you, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? So these verses highlight the idea that in most cases, if not more than most, we're never going to be able to get many things, to get better things, to get what we desire to get, to reach the higher echelons that we're seeking in life, in prospects and opportunities and places and people, relationships and things, right? Without being thankful, grateful, and a good steward of the small things. So let's think about some examples here, right? Let's look at a very common one. Let's look at money, right? Income, finances, stuff like that, right? Now, of course, there's varying degrees of people, and whether some people are very good financially in certain spots where they're blessed with a good income. Others who are in like a kind of a middle area that's sometimes good, sometimes not, in between, it's semi comfortable. Others who are struggling and maybe worse off, right? Now, not in every situation where someone's struggling or is doing good is it because they've made actions that have forced them to go into that situation, or it's on their own, you know, discredit, so to speak. Um, However, it is often like that. And sometimes we don't realize it, sometimes we don't recognize it or acknowledge it because that would mean we have to accept blame and fault and recognize our shortcomings, which of course, as humans, that takes a great amount of humility to do. And I'll get into humility a bit later as well too, but that ties in a lot to us being able to receive more when we're humble. So in finances, for example, right? Let's say you're someone who's, let's say, middle class in society, in whichever country we might be in, right? Now, in certain societies and cultures throughout the world, of course, the middle class is starting to kind of get a bit more eroded to some degree, and there's a bit more of a gap between wealth and wealthy individuals and non-wealthy, and vice versa. But not to say we'll use that for argument's sake that a middle class still exists somewhat fundamentally. So with a middle class, let's say you're someone who's, making middle class income, right? So you're able to provide for yourself, and for a family that you might have or something, right? But maybe barely, you're just barely making ends meet. Um, right? You have maybe a little bit left over beyond just what you're, you know, having to use for needs of life. But the extra that you're using for, you're not using it to save, you're not using it to invest, you're not using it to bless others, right? To help others out. You're just using it on your own vices that give no benefit to anyone besides your ego or your pride. In that type of situation, right, you may look at say, I'm not making a lot of money, right? I'm not, you know, blessed with hundreds of thousands, I'm not blessed with millions or billions or whatever it might be. But that's the thing, you won't be blessed with that. You won't be afforded that opportunity to steward those type of finances, to steward those types of benefits. If you can't handle the amount you've already gotten, I'll use myself for an example as well. I myself am, I enjoy finances. I enjoy being able to budget, to invest, to save, to figure out how to use money in a wise way, right? I've been like that for quite a while. Um, Part of the reason why I got like that because when I was younger, especially in my early mid teenage years and whatnot, I saw a lot of people around my age and a lot of people older than me too in better situations than I've been with finances in terms of what they receive, and yet be in worse positions after the end because they just made, quite frankly, not the greatest and sometimes horrible decisions of finances and how they steward stuff. And I never wanted to find myself to be in a position like that. I wanted to do better, not just for myself and for my ego and my pride and my self esteem, but for the people around me, the people that I care about, right? The people I want to go out and bless and be an example, be an example of Christ, and just be generous and charitable, right? So, and I wanted to be able to say, okay, because over my life too, I've never been in a spot where I've made a ton of money at any job I've really ever worked, right? Um, right, God's always provided for me with just enough. But that's the thing, I've never been like, I've been blessed, don't get me wrong, but I've also like not been, I'm not sitting here making, you know, in Canadian dollars, 60, 70 plus K. I'm not making six figures. I'm not rolling in millions, right? Right. So because of there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, the money I have right now, it's like, okay, well, I've got a lot of it's going to rent, a lot of it's going to um, just, groceries and other just miscellaneous expenses, right? But I don't spend on a lot, but hence the reason why I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? I made sure I was studious. I made sure I was diligent and focused on, okay, what can I do with the little that I have, right? And because I haven't necessarily made a lot most years that I've been, doing work and things like that, it's also forced me to become a better steward. It forced me to become more faithful with what I've been given, right? So I recognize that everything I've been given is still a blessing. Even if I might view it as a pittance, even though I might view it as something that is weaker compared to others, maybe not what I deserve and what I think I deserve, but what I have is what I have. And this goes just beyond finances, but this is just a prime example I'll use, right? So, how am I faithful for what I've got? How do I glorify and honor God with what He's allowed me to hold financially? And, you know, do I save money for things? Do I invest money to grow my wealth and be able to provide for, for a family, right? Do I have money in a way where I use it wisely, where there's extra, where I can be charitable, I can give, I can bless others, right? That I make sure I'm not putting myself or my family or any type of individuals, right, that I care about into a position that they never needed to be in. That's uncomfortable, that's undesirable, that's not right. So, so we have to look at that context, right? Is that okay? Yeah, we may not be blessed with a lot in terms of, you know, physical items. We might have, wealth, um, so a whole sorts of other things, right? But what we do have, are we being faithful with it, and are we stewarding, and are we still giving God glory in it? Are we respecting the position we're in, right? We don't have to like it, we don't have to love it, but we do have to respect it, and we do have to remain faithful in that situation because, and the Bible speaks to it, right? When you're faithful over just a few things in life, when you're faithful over the small stuff, God sees that. He honors that. And it's not to say that He's going to necessarily bring you many things exactly when you want them, but He's going to bring them when you're ready for them. But He also sees that you're ready for them, right? It's the progression, it's that journey, right? It's the journey of, okay, God's looking down and saying, hey, okay, I see that, you know, you are, or they are, doing well with what they've been given, right? They're in a spot where they're not able to be as fluent in certain regards they'd like to be, but they're doing well. They're honoring me. They are blessing others. They are helping themselves. They're stabilizing. They're doing what they can with what they have. And as such, right, I'll bless them now as they, continue to be ready for the bigger blessing. The thing is too, and when I talked about humility earlier, right? You have to humble yourself with saying, "Hey, what I have right now, yeah, I've got to be good with this." Because there's sometimes where we will look back and sit back and we'll say, "I deserve this. I deserve better. I deserve this, whatever." And when we have that mindset, that's focusing so much on us, but not in a constructive sense, right? It's focusing on us in an egotistical way, and it's not being humble because it's our pride thinking that and desiring that, well, we want better. And it's not wrong to want better, right? But first and foremost, we have to humble ourselves and recognize we should want a better relationship with God than a relationship with money, items, or what other better things we would desire, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. So, right? But then when you're not faithful, when you're not humble with the small stuff, right? And you're not respecting it, when you're not giving God glory, when you're not, again, being diligent with what you already have, you know, that same that same mindset, same mentality, same spirit and heart is going to carry over into if you do happen to come into bigger things, right? You could get ruined. You could ruin a lot of other people. You can ruin situations because you aren't humble, because you aren't faithful. It's a spirit, it's a heart issue, it's a mind contrast, right? You you're not just gonna sit here and be, oh yeah, I'm horrible at being faithful with small stuff, but I'm gonna be so much better once I get bigger wealth. We think that in a utopian mind. In some cases, we may think we can do that. But when you get bigger things, there's a lot of other things that come with that, right? You get more wealth, there becomes a lot more influence, a lot more people seeking after you for a variety of things. Um, right? Whole sorts of different aspects and environments you have to find yourself in that you've never expected, never prepared for, weren't aware of. So that's net, and you're never really gonna be like, oh well, I was gonna do this, but now I have to do this. Now I am more persuaded to do this, or I desire to do this, because you're influenced by your environments, you're influenced by your new situation, you're influenced by your new resources, right? But when you humble yourself before God, and when we do that, and when we strive after Him and honoring Him with what we have, that carries over. And that allows someone who, let's say, is broke at one time in their life, is able to become a millionaire or a billionaire, for example, and carry the same mindset and righteous, pursuit and stewardship of what they have. So that's one example. Of course, you can also use that in a variety of other things like relationships, career opportunities, and advancements. You know, um, better living places, um, all sorts of things, right? Material possessions, whatever it might be. And then, and to pull it even closer to home, again, I'll use myself because I am the best example that I can give to others. Not say I'm a good example for everything good, but that I know myself the best in that context is there's a lot of things that I do that I enjoy doing, right, that I'm pursuing, even now, that I don't have a crazy huge amount of, you could say, either success or be in the place and desires where I want to be with them, right? For example, this YouTube channel, all right? I never set out with desires to be incredibly well known and have millions of subscribers. I mean, that was never my intention. Never has been. I never even, years back, I never even wanted to get onto YouTube in general. I didn't want to ride that train. I didn't. Um, right. But here I am now. But the thing is, I'll do these type of videos, whether I get 10 views on them and one like or no likes, whether I have 5 subscribers or 5 million or anything in between. I don't, because what I like to do is what is going to make an impact in people's lives. What's going to glorify God and encourage people to desire a relationship with Him and pursue after Him and His kingdom and His righteousness. So I know that God's given me skills and abilities in creative endeavors, creative fields, creating videos, right? Writing rap and spoken word, right? Um, Writing books and novels, poetry, um, you know, business opportunities and entrepreneurship and organizing, right? These are the things that I am good at. These are the things I am skilled at. And I'm going to do them. And despite the fact that all of them have either, very limited to no significant influence over any large group of people, that's fine. Because I'll steward this channel, I'll steward my music, I'll steward my writings and creative endeavors as righteous as I can, regardless of whether anybody interacts with them or everybody does. Because the impact that God can do through me and the impact in other people's lives, like I said, you know, I might only have, let's say, maybe 50 people watch this video, 50 views, maybe less, right? But the impact that somebody might take from this, the impact that this might have on someone, and the glory that God can receive from it, can be just as good, if not greater, than having 5 million people see this, right? It's not about the numbers. And that's one thing I've always wanted to be is I don't really care what I have. There's things I want better and things I want more of, yes. And I'm making pursuits and ambitions for that. But my ambition, first and foremost, is wanting more of God. right? More of him. And then as such, that strips away everything else, right? That is less, that doesn't isn't necessary. So, you know, I'm faithful in this. I'm faithful in my relationships with the people that I hold close, my family, right? Romantic relationship, uh, friends. You know, I don't, as small of of a sphere of influence that I might have in things, right? I want to know that I've had an impact. I don't care about the numbers. I really don't. The greater the numbers is cool, great. But the thing is, like I was saying, I'm focusing on making sure I'm humble before God. So that I'm carrying the mindset of, okay, I stewarded it well with this low amount. And if God wants to give me more, he'll give me more. But at the end of the day, that's where I'm at, right? That's where I think we all need to be at. Is recognizing, yeah, we may not necessarily like or find it comfortable where we're at. And yes, it's good to pursue and strive for more. But also realize you're not in control of what more you receive in a lot of cases. That's up to God. That's up to things beyond your control. What is in your control? Are you faithful with the little you have now? Right? You want the sharks in life, right? But the sharks are not going to come to you unless you make the small fish bleed first. Right? Sharks aren't attracted. The shark's not going to come to you, right? Has no reason to be attracted to you unless you've gotten smaller fish, smaller food for it to have, right? So you've got to handle. You've got to kill the small fish. You got to make it bleed. You got to do well with it. You got to overcome what you do with little, right? And then greater can come. When will it come? Who knows, right? But that opportunity is there. That opportunity is present. And that goes for every aspect of life, every avenue, every arena, right? Right. And like I said, so, and as Luke 16:12 was saying, right, if you're not faithful in that which is someone else's, like I said, a lot of what we have isn't actually even ours. In fact, if you go by a spiritual account, everything we have is not ours. We view in the materialistic human realm sense for all stuff we have, right? But everything I've got, everything I've been afforded the opportunity to have, is not mine. Even the stuff I create is technically God's. The stuff I create is, in terms of like my creative endeavors, that's God working through me. That's God giving me the opportunity to breathe, to write, to rhyme, to record, to do whatever. Right? All the possessions, pretty much that I have, that any possessions you see in this camera shot, in this lens, sure I purchased, sure I received, right? Sure I was gifted or whatever it might have been, right? None of it's mine. I didn't create it. I didn't, or maybe originally purchase it. Uh, I didn't, whatever, right? It's stuff that I'm stewarding, right? And that goes beyond just the physical, but also into, well, you know, the non-visible and non-tangible. All right. So when you're faithful with what's not yours, you're much more able to be faithful with that which is going to be your own. Right. And like I said, you're never going to be able to have true riches and handle them well unless you're handling what is very basic, what is very rudimentary, or what is very low, essentially, right? In our view. So, and like I said, when you're not humbled, then you're not just. And what you're going to be unjust in little, you're going to be unjust in much. Because again, like I was saying earlier, it's the heart, it's the mind, it's the spirit. It's that you're built in, right? Environments, situations, opportunities play their role and play their factor. But are we humbled? And sometimes that's the thing. God's putting us in the position we're in right now to be humbled, to be able to afford us the opportunity to receive greater. We want greater. And Kyle's like, okay, cool, fantastic. Be humble. Take this. Take what you got. Take what I'm giving you right now. Yes, it might be tough. Yes, you might be struggling. Yes, you might not be where you want to be. But if you do well with this, you have no idea what you can receive beyond that. So that's why I wanted to hit up there. Um, I actually thought this video was going to be a shorter one than I normally do. And yeah, no, it's about the same length, if not longer than most of them. So, oh well, it's what it is. I don't mind going on. Anyways, so yeah, that's pretty much basically all I've got for today. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. For any of you, for all of you who've come to view any points of this video, whether it's been a couple seconds, couple minutes, or the entirety, I appreciate it greatly. Thank you, and I hope that you're all blessed in everything that you pursue in righteous endeavors. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like or a comment to let me know, and let me know how it impacted you or how what you thought about it, good, bad, or indifferent. Right? And if you want to see more of these kind of videos and other adventures that I'm going to go on in life as well, then feel free to subscribe, turn on your notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos and other experiences and exposures. All right. But yeah, outside of that, that's all I got for you guys today. So until I see you guys next time, be faithful, be fruitful, and be fulfilled. God bless everyone. See ya.